To what degree should business leaders outside of the data organization be able to own their own data strategy? I got this question, and I think it's a really interesting one. And I've got a point of view on it that is probably different from many people. So in general, I support business leaders and business teams being very data capable and to a certain extent having significant input into their own use of data and what they're going to do with it. And I actually think that it's the end state of what we as data people all say is important to us, right? We all say it's important that the business care about data and that the business be able to use data effectively and that businesses learn to be data literate and they learn to do all of this stuff with data and think it's important. It's only natural that teams that do this well are going to have amazingly capable data people who are in those business functions. The marketing person is a very strong data person. Yes, their role is marketing, but they're excellent with data. I've worked at companies where the president of the company and the heads of major divisions were going in and running SQL queries because it was a technical company and there was a level of technical competence that was expected and encouraged throughout the organization. And this was amazing because I think it helped them compared to other people in the past. If you're a business person, knowing SQL, being able to dive into a database, get your questions answered immediately, lets you iterate and learn much faster than your peers. So it's no surprise that if you play that out over the years, business people who are good at data and can go and get their own data and do their own analyses are going to grow and be more effective and more impactful than their peers who can't. And that's one of the big reasons why I think that like every business person who works with data a lot should learn SQL. Anybody who uses Excel a lot should learn SQL because it's easy and it gives you massive benefits. That's probably a topic for a different video. So in this case, I see the end state of effective data culture is that business teams are very involved in their own data work and data strategy. And so what does this mean, though, for how they interact with the data organization? And here's the way that I see it work well, is when both leaders have a lot of respect and understanding for the others trying to do with data, and then are able to work together effectively to make the best decisions for the organization. There are some things that the data team should own. There are some things that the data team probably shouldn't own, right? Like you don't need to only have data people looking at Google Analytics or Amplitude or Mixpanel or Heap or any of the web analytics platforms. It is good for product managers to be able to go in there and make their own decisions based on the data that they're seeing. It's good for the marketing people to be able to go in and see the results of the campaigns that they're doing and be able to make their own independent decisions with data. And you don't want to have someone need to get on a queue for the data team to ask about that kind of stuff every single time they need it. It's just going to slow down your organization immensely. On the other side of it, you don't want the marketing team spinning up their own data warehouse. You don't want them deciding on a different full technology stack than everyone else in the organization is using, because what it means is that suddenly you can't interoperate. You can't connect the product data with the marketing data because they're in two separate data warehouses. So you want to have some things together. Some things are okay to be apart. Like there are certain circumstances where there are off-the-shelf tools that you can buy that would replace certain things that the data team might do themselves. So for example, if you're a SaaS startup, you might buy like a Profit Well, which will connect to your Stripe and do a whole bunch of reporting, or Chart Moguls in that space as well. And so, yes, it's a whole bunch of revenue and leadership reports that traditionally would be done by a data team. Sometimes you might want to just buy that, or a business leader wants to buy that. And is it worth having it be done in the data team? Well, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And in the margins, where I've always leaned is what's the best support for the business leader, not what's the best for data for data. If you could do it, but you're not going to do it for a year, you're not going to do it for 18 months, then let the business leader go off, right? Yes, it's not necessarily the most conducive to your long-term data vision of how things would be in an ideal world, but you're never getting those 18 months back. And those 18 months for a business leader who's got numbers to hit and needs to actually do things, that's crucial. And so if you're in a situation where you can snap your fingers and immediately get value in a big way to leaders that are in other teams, I generally support doing that. That's my point of view on tools and how you sort of come to a good consensus on what makes sense to sit where. But in general, you should be supporting the business unit teams to have a strong point of view on their data strategy and how data is going to affect them. The second piece here is on team members. So you'll find this a lot. The marketing team wants to hire a marketing analyst instead of having a data analyst on the data team. They want that to be on the marketing team. I think that there are a couple of flavors of this. Number one, it should be a red flag for the relationship if people are trying to do it and not talk to you about it. So when it works well is when the marketing leader wants that and then talks to you about it to say, whose team does it make sense for this person to be on? Where it is not good is when they try to hide it and just like hire someone without telling you. And then suddenly you realize months later, oh, there's this new marketing analytics person, marketing analyst, like where did they come from? That's a really bad sign that there's something wrong with the relationship and that the head of the marketing team doesn't feel like you're actually supporting them to the point that they need to go around your back and get actual support. And I see that strictly as a problem with the data team, not a problem with the marketing team, which is also a topic for another video. In general, when you're in those situations and you are trying to figure out, you need someone new in the business, where are they going to sit? Are they going to be under data? Or are they going to be under one of the business functions? I've got a way to frame this to business leaders that can be really helpful, which I'll explain in just a second. And then also I've got a philosophy on where they should actually sit, because I don't think they should always sit in data. So in general, the way that I see the best place for someone like that to report depends on them. What do they want to be for their career? If you're hiring a marketing analyst who wants to end up being a CMO one day or being a senior marketing leader, then they should report into marketing. They shouldn't report into data, even if they have a data role, even if they're being hired for a data role. If their ultimate career aspirations are in the business unit, then they should report into the business unit, because that's going to be best for their career. You still have them dotted line to a data manager, but their direct line should be into the business unit. And the opposite is true also. If you've got someone who wants to be a data person for their career, then they should report into the data leader and then dotted line into the functional leader, because that's going to help that person. That way, that person's manager is helping them develop in the direction that they want to for their own career. And I think that that is important. If you're in one of those situations and the marketing or the business unit leaders are a little concerned about how much support they're really going to get if they don't have it into their org, if it's into your org, oftentimes this will happen like early on in a data leader's tenure, because over time, everybody's just going to know. And that's the good thing and the bad thing, is that in the long run, everybody's going to know how you support the different business units. If there's a marketing analyst, is there a reasonable expectation that the marketing team is going to be able to direct the work that that analyst does and set the agenda and get a lot of value from it? When they report into your org, they're going to have evidence, either yes or no, and then they're not going to care if the next marketing analyst is under them or not. But in the beginning of any job that you have as a data leader, people aren't going to be sure how it's going to work. And so the way that I frame it and the way I try to execute it, and I try to get this actually to happen, is that it's like a third, a third, a third. So data work, if you split it into three, you would have 1/3 data infrastructure backend stuff, 1/3 short-term ad hoc support for business units, and then 1/3 medium to long-term projects for the business units. And so by framing it like that, the pitch is that business leader, you're going to get 2/3 of this person's time. Occasionally, they're going to have to do work to support the general data infrastructure of the team, which will be about 1/3 of the time, but most of their time is going to be directly decided by you and your priorities. And by the way, the alternative to that, if they are on your team, they're probably going to spend more than 1/3 of their time doing data infrastructure stuff as opposed to actually driving your priorities forward, because they're not going to have as much of the benefit of the data team infrastructure. And now you make it work either way, where even if they end up going to another person's team, you still try to keep them as connected as possible. Even if they do have aspirations to be a marketer and they report into marketing, you still try to keep them connected. They still do about 1/3 of their work to data infrastructure. But in that way, you want to directly address the concerns that those business leaders have around the fact that they're going to essentially sacrifice their budget for something that supports marketing that's actually not going to end up supporting marketing. So that is my point of view on the team and org structure side of it. So thank you for the question. It's a really interesting question. And many data leaders want to really have like strict ownership over a lot of this stuff. I think it's the wrong strategy. I think you got to spread out the ownership of data as far and wide as you can inside an organization. And then everybody's going to love data and you're going to be set up to have a very successful data team. Thanks. Bye.